We are live once again with another episode of Coffee with Humans with my soon-to-be new friend, Sabrina Lindner. Sabrina, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thank you so much. Let's see whether we become friends over the conversation.
Right? Well, I've never made an enemy on Coffee with Humans, so you would be the...
Okay, then maybe we turn this into a special episode, but no, friends is better.
Well, so the special sauce in Coffee with Humans is not only that I get to meet wonderful people all around the world, but you and I don't know each other at all. We did a couple tech checks. We named this chat. The conversation can go anywhere as though we just bumped into each other at a coffee shop. So I'm very curious. A couple things. Number one is, where are you located? I'm outside Chicago in USA, Illinois.
Well, I'm in Munich in the south of Germany.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we are on completely different continents, separated by thousands of miles. And through the wonderful world of technology, we can have this discussion, which is amazing to me. I love it.
Yeah, awesome.
And so as two really great people out of 8 billion on the planet, I'm curious, why did you click the button to have coffee with me?
That's a good question. It's because I love conversations and like raw and real conversations. And the concept of two strangers just meeting and starting a conversation is very much what I love doing.
Okay. Where did you develop that love? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from a fascination for human beings in general. I just love the diversity that human beings have, but at the same time, the fact that we are all fundamentally the same in certain ways. And I have a small son who's like 4.5 years old, and he is very social on the playground. So whenever we go out, I also start conversations because, you know, you meet all sorts of people out there on the playground. So I think that's where I realized, wow, apart from me, of course, being a coach and doing a lot of conversations anyway, it's just so cool when you meet someone and you start having that connection with someone you have never met before in your life. And sometimes these conversations are the coolest and the deepest, and you get the most out of them.
Yeah, it's almost like the stranger on a plane scenario where people will talk to an absolute stranger on a plane and tell them their deepest, darkest secrets, because there's no history, right? There's no feelings and emotions in the history of it, and so and then it's like and I get to leave this person on this plane, but it's interesting that sometimes those conversations, like you say, they go so deep into areas that we never thought we might reveal or open up, about ourselves or come to new realizations. And if you're in the world of coaching, I'm assuming, and just going off on a limb here, but I'm assuming you talk to people all the time and get them thinking about these things that they want to talk about, but maybe don't know how to express.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said, like having a clean slate and just starting to talk to someone can bring up new perspectives and new things that we would have never found out about otherwise if we had not taken the step to make that conversation happen. So I think there's so much potential and real connections, and actually just talking about anything it's just amazing. And that's why I'm here, I guess.
Well, I'm excited for that. So you have been coaching. What kind of coach? Classify what this idea of coaching is. What is it to you?
To me, coaching is really a space for a conversation. Just what we just said, like that brings up new things and unshackles the mind of a person so that they can move forward in whatever way. You know, it doesn't mean that you must have a deep, dark problem or something, but it just means you are in a certain place and you want to move to a different place in your life. You want to unshackle, to grow, to experience something new. So for me, coaching is all about creating that safe space to make that happen.
Okay. And you got into coaching, why?
So I didn't know about coaching until my previous company where I used to work sent me on a professional coaching training. I was a sales manager. And it was like one of those aha moments where I sat in the training and was like, wow, okay, this is exactly what I have been looking for. This is a tool to really bring out something in people that previously I didn't know how to bring that out. So it was, I would say, a by the chance thing that the company just decided, okay, let's invest in our management team and send them on a professional training. That was in Nairobi, Kenya, and our teachers were just awesome. I think that's also another thing. If you have good teachers who inspire you, then it lights a fire in you. But to me, it was this idea that with a great conversation and a real connection, when you really listen to someone and give them space, so much can happen, even in just 30 minutes or shorter sometimes. So yeah, that's how I stumbled across coaching.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So you and obviously enjoy helping people through the process of you like you talk about becoming unshackled and moving ahead with, I think you used the word freedom when you signed up. The system asked you a handful of questions, and one of them
Yes.
was, if you had to name a chapter of your life, what's the name of this chapter? And you said freedom, which
Yeah.
to me, like, walk me through that idea of unshackled to freedom. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So to me, it means that you live your life as the person you really feel you are, and you get to do things that are in alignment with that. And often we get stuck in certain things, be it a job or a relationship or maybe a place where we live, that we feel not really in alignment with. We are not super unhappy necessarily, but we are not super excited or energized and feel things are light and easy. We feel things are a bit heavy or dark, or sometimes we are sad. Those are the signs that we are not free. We are not ourselves completely. And that's when things start to get sort of difficult in life, and when they get sticky and we feel stuck and we don't really move forward, and we start asking ourselves all these questions about the sense of life and all that. But when we have that freedom to absolutely be in alignment, that's when magic happens. That's when we meet people who are good for us. That's when new opportunities come our way. And I've experienced that with myself. So I guess really that's why it's the essence of, the conversations I have with people, basically.
So you said, and I'm you said it right at the beginning, something about you are like, what did you say? I'm trying to get the exact wording, but it reminded me of a quote that I just put up yesterday from John Maxwell. You are who you are because that's who you choose to be. You hold that same essence out, which is you are creating the life that you are. You are who you are creating.
Absolutely. It's this idea of be, do, and then have.
Okay.
And the more we are who we like really feel we should be,
Okay.
then we do things that are in alignment with that. And that's when we start to have what we really want. All of us, I'm sure everyone, and even you yourself, if we think about it, although we might have successful lives or have done a lot of things, it doesn't always mean that we have a crappy life, but there's something that we hold back on, like a dream or a desire or something that we want to do in our lives, but we haven't had the courage to take that step to really go there. And once you do that, that's another level of like feeling light and easy and free and excited and especially energized. It's then almost like we start feeding ourselves with energy just by being in that flow. I call it free flow for myself when that happens.
So you said be, do, have. That's a
Yes.
progression. Okay. So walk me through that progression. I find it fascinating, because we do live into the potential we believe we have. Right? Tell a
Yes.
child he's stupid, he's going to act like he's stupid. Tell a child he's amazing and wonderful, and he'll act like he's. They've done studies on this, that they actually told children, students, you're at the top of the class. You're doing a great job. Now take this test.
Mhm.
And then they told the other students, well, we're not even sure if you can hack it. They
Mm.
didn't tell them they're failures, right? But they're like, this is going to be a struggle for you. Take the test. And the children who were told that they were better, that they were high performers, actually statistically were more did better on the test,
Yeah.
simply because they believed that they could, which defies all logic. There's nothing logical about that concept that we can create the our own performance. And yet this has been proven over and over again.
Mhm.
So walk me through that B, because I think that's the core, right? The core is who
Yeah.
are you going to be, which determines what you will or will not do, which then obviously the consequences are what you will or will not have.
Yeah. It's so true what you're saying, that it's like sort of the core, because it influences everything else around us and how our life progresses and what happens to us. And actually, there is a lot of logic in the whole idea, because even Albert Einstein, as a physics expert, talked about it. He didn't say like it's magic, it's physics. That if we create a certain energy in us, like if we start living as who we want to live, then we create the same world around us, because there's something about energy that happens. We start, if I am a very confident person, if I say I want certain opportunities in my life and I start showing up in the world confidently and talk about the things that I'm really passionate about, it will be easy for me to draw opportunities from that, because people will notice, wow, this person really believes in what they say. I want to talk to them, or I want to see whether we can work together or have, do create something together. So it's really a very logical thing, but it's not part of, how our systems work at the moment. That's why it seems like, oh, some esoteric stuff about energy, or I don't know. But it's actually it's a reality that happens. And as you said, studies also confirm that a lot.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I look at it. It can be observed.
Mm-hmm.
How it's created, like how it happens, people have differing perspectives on. But it
Absolutely.
is absolutely observed, and even scientific, even using the scientific method.
Mm.
Uh, so you're like, just as you say, it's not some esoteric thing that that some people talk about as energy. Like I've heard people talk about as a vibration, like vibrate at a higher
Yeah,
frequency or something like that. I don't
true.
understand the thought process. I don't understand that for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
like vibration. Um, but I do know and have observed that when I start believing, like whatever I believe I can do, and when I believe that I can't do it. And I've seen
Yeah.
that over and over with people I've come in contact with in my life, for sure. And then obviously
Mm-hmm.
studies confirm that as well. So how do you engage with people, or what type of people do you engage with, and how have you seen this idea of believing, or being, doing, and having, how have you seen that unfold with people you worked with?
Oh, I think there are just like thousands of examples over my life where I've seen it in myself, of course, and also in people around me, people I've engaged with at work, as a sales manager, in my team. Someone who comes in like very confident and believing that they can make the sale happen will have a certain energy about them that often pulls then the sale in. So it's a lot about, as you say rightly, like how we think about ourselves. And the interesting thing is here that, of course, a lot of that comes from what we have been told and what we have experienced over our lives. So a child, who has been told a story that they are never good enough, or has made up that story from comments they have gotten, it's not always that they have been told, oh, you're not yet there, because it was like they had mean guardians or parents or people around them. Often we say these critical things to other human beings because we still hold on to the belief that it makes them thrive. But it actually does the opposite, right? It might pull them down if they hear all the time, oh, you're not yet there. But children who sort of have that story in their head, like, I can do anything, it's easier for them to achieve also later in their life. But then there are also key events that happen in our early childhood or later in life that leave like a physical imprint and a very strong emotion, and we start creating reality from that. So let's say something bad happened to me that I perceived as bad in my teenagehood. Let's say I failed a math test, and then I was told, oh, you're just not good at math, you will never be good at business. And then I carry that story all my life, making up this thing, oh, because I'm not good with numbers, I will never succeed at business, and that will hold me back. So that's just one example. And if you closely observe, and I've, because I worked in travel, I've seen like people from all over the world, it's the same pattern. Once we make up a certain reality based on one or two events, then it either helps us thrive or it helps us, stay stuck. The interesting thing here is that at any time of our life, we have the ability to change it. And that's the empowering thought about the whole story. Once you make that decision, can absolutely change it.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the people that we as individuals tend to follow, like if we're listening to someone on a stage, thousands of us in a room, the person who has always been successful, it's like, okay, that's cool, but I can't be that person. It's the person who believed one story, switched that story up, and then moved on to success. That's the person everybody's gives the standing ovation to, claps to, because I think that tells us, whether we're conscious of it or not, it tells us that we can do that too. Because all of us tend to walk around with some story that doesn't make sense anymore. Absolutely. It was a story that was told to us a long time ago. Maybe we even made it up.
Absolutely.
That is limiting us. And we're like, but I'm capable of so much more. We've got a listener here, Karen.
Yes.
Hey, she's out on LinkedIn, and hey to you. Thanks for listening. It's always better to have high expectations than lower them for someone who has difficulty. The person will accomplish more closely to that which is expected or so believed to be able to do. What do you think of that?
I think high expectations, anyway, those are all labels. What is a high expectation? What is a low expectation? It's relative, depending with what our own definition is. And as human beings, every one of us, although we are all the same, we experience this human journey. What happens is that we have our own filters, our own reality, like how we see the world, right? So we are not saying that someone who has difficulty should like have lower, be placed in like, oh, you can't achieve anyway, so let's just have low expectations of you. Not at all. The question is, what story does that person have in their mind about their abilities, and how can we lift that? So with positive talk and positive encouragement and a rewiring of their thought of who they really are and what they can expect of their lives, that's when magic happens. It's not like telling them, oh, you are going to stay low anyway. We are having low expectations of you. No, right. You can thrive as well if you write your own story. If you start defining, who do I really want to be? What is my why, my purpose, my passion, and where do I want to go? And what can I actually do, even if it's baby steps, to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you talked about in this. Who do I want to be? I just wrote a book and put it out there. And one of the things I encourage people to do is develop I call it a 3 to 5 year plan. Like, don't make it super complicated and and have wall charts and stuff like that. You've never done any planning before, and all of a sudden you're just gonna knock it out of the park, relax for a moment. 3 to 5 years. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Just make a list and go back to the things that have been bubbling up in your mind over time. So, and the example that I use is years ago, I was afraid of heights, and I was tired of living. I felt like I was living in a lot of fear, and I didn't want to be
Mm,
so afraid. And I thought, well, I can knock out this fear of heights thing, and I would also like to, on my do side, like to climb a mountain. And these two
mm,
things, joined together. And I thought, well, it's time. Like I got to tackle this thing because I don't want to be the person who listens to this fear. And my reasoning, my logic behind it was, if two people are standing on the edge of a cliff, one person's afraid, the other person isn't. What's the difference? They're both in the same circumstance. One person comes at to it with fear and goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared," and the other person comes at it with confidence. What's the difference? And so I thought,
mm.
if I'm the person who's afraid, there must be something I don't know, and if I could learn that, then I could have confidence. And so I learned to rock climb.
Mm,
In doing so, I learned when I was safe and how to keep myself safe, in which
mm,
case I didn't need to be afraid. Fear is a powerful motivator, and rightly so. If I'm in an unsafe position, I should be afraid. It keeps me from
mhm.
doing dumb things. But if I'm safe, I have nothing to be afraid of, and I can
Yeah.
continue on. And so that on the who do I want to be side of things, it allowed me to be more adventurous, because I took those fears, which were, people talking about as limiting beliefs or whatever, took those fears and um, diminished their power by doing something to learn more about, learn more about that space, which then
Yeah.
had a ripple effect into other fears too. It's like, oh, okay, well,
Mm.
how, in what other ways am I safe when I've been treating myself as though I'm unsafe? In which case, I could be all sorts of things that I have not yet been.
Yeah, that's, I mean, what you just shared is exactly that process of sort of rewriting or rewiring your story and how you think about certain things. It's extremely powerful to put yourself in that exact position and realize, oh, just because I was afraid in the past or something happened in the past, it doesn't mean the same thing will always happen again, like I will be unsafe or whatever it might be. So yeah.
And this plays out not only in our personal lives, for us individually, but because these limiting beliefs, these who do I want to be issues are stuck here, it
Yeah.
it exposes for us challenges in how we show up for other people, right? So in our
Mhm.
relationships, in our workplaces, there's a great book called "Don't Bring It to Work," which talks about how uh, it talks about family relationships and family dynamics, and how we show up in our families, how we were programmed to show up in our families, is how we also show up in groups of other people.
Mm.
And so if we were the loner underdog, not listened to or whatever in our family, we tend to show up as a loner underdog, not listened to person in our professional relationships. If we were the type A, the firstborn, got to go get it, got to achieve, we tend to show up in our professional, in our workplaces as the type A, got to go do these things. And like you talk about, if these things that we were programmed from, if these characteristics which are in us from a young age, programmed into us by choice or not, usually not, um, if those aren't working for us anymore, we have the opportunity to look at those at any point in time and
Yes,
begin to address them. We're not lost. We're
exactly.
never without hope.
Yeah. The thing is that I've talked to a lot of people over, several years around this topic, and the interesting thing is that often the consciousness, the awareness about, oh, something is not sitting right with me, and I can't really grasp it, but I have the power to actually go and explore. Many people don't realize it until they hit like sort of dramatic rock bottom, or some event in their life happens that sort of forces them to slow down completely and reassess. And that's exactly what sometimes a good conversation can prevent, that you hit that moment of total pain and like, oh my God, I've lost everything. When you have like deep, meaningful conversations with people, that's sometimes when these aha moments pop up and we are like, oh, okay, maybe I should go and explore. Or actually I'm empowered. I can do something, you know, just by us interacting like on a real authentic level with other human beings.
I think this opens up a this opens up a thought process into the necessity of struggle, because nobody
Yeah.
wants to struggle. And I was talking, I was teaching the other day to some high school students about entrepreneurship and whatnot. And one of the comments I made is we as people, and particularly in the Western world and capitalism and entrepreneurship and all this other stuff, we are hyper fixated on reducing struggle. How easy can we make something? And I talked about bottled water. I said, why does anybody pick up a thing of bottled water? And I was like, it's hundreds of times more expensive to buy bottled water than it is to get it out of your tap. Your tap is just fine. Half of it is just filtered tap water, from 2 states away anyhow, put into this plastic bottle. And you are so lazy that you will pick up this tiny little bottle of water versus filling up, a bottle or a glass or whatever you have in your house, because it is so easy. It's super expensive, but so easy to just pick up this bottle of water. And it defies reason in some ways. But we are fixated on how easy can I make this transaction? How easy can my life be, that any struggle we push away. And yet it seems like you talk about some of the biggest aha moments in a person's life come at a point of deep struggle. So why would we want to push away struggle if it actually generates the greatest life change?
That's an interesting perspective on it. Me thinking about it as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, so the 15 years I lived in Nairobi in Kenya, I obviously saw a lot of struggle. Like every day on the road, you see struggle, because that's just what a lot of people go through, especially in such a big city. And also throughout my traveling career, like when I was a sales manager, there was so many countries where I also saw struggle. But then when 3 years ago we moved to Munich, actually I was wondering, like, okay, guys, what's happening here? Why are you making everything so complicated and painful and heavy? So I must honestly say, coming from 15 years of Kenya, I felt that the capitalist, like European or Western world, however, and I would imagine where you are, it's similar, makes everything so overly complicated to a point where it's painful every day. So instead of opening the tap, which is very simple, you buy a bottle of water. That would be my perspective on it. So creating a struggle and like a unnecessary additional exchange, because we are using this example now, we are creating that and making it even more complicated and adding an extra task to our daily life. So that's how I view it, because when your life is stripped down to essentials and there's only that, okay, I live maybe from day to day, then you can't think of overly complicating stuff. So I think growth is anyway an essential part of the human journey. So there will always be some part of it that is like sort of perceived as struggle. It's just part of how human life goes, I think.
I look at this is so fascinating to me. On a very surface level or simple level, I think of the adage, necessity is the mother of invention. So if you want to invent something, we'll never remove necessity. Always leave room for some sort of necessity, because you will get invention out of that, and that's proven over and over and over again. The other thing is you talk about energy. You also mentioned Einstein and physics and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so if energy can't be matter can't be created, energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. struggle can't be created or destroyed either. It can change forms. And so let's use the water example. And maybe, this is just
Yeah, we are
somebody,
just using.
it's so interesting, but like this water example. So I replaced one set of one work or one struggle with a different one. It's not like it went away. I now have a plastic
Exactly.
bottle that needs to be created. I now go to the store to pick up a whole thing of water. I now pay more money for that. I now drag that whole thing of water and put it someplace so it takes up space. I then have stuff to throw away when like you say, I could have just turned on the tap and moved my hand, from my cabinet where I've got an aluminum bottle or or a long-term Nalgene plastic bottle and filled that bottle and then taken that on the road. The amount of work and quote unquote struggle was simply transferred to someplace else where I felt maybe I had a better value exchange, but it's not thought through. It just seems easier. It's not easier. It moved
Exactly.
itself someplace else. And I think, this idea of maybe the unaddressed things in our lives, the who we want to be, until we address the who we want to be, we kind of move our troubles around. They don't
Yeah,
go away.
exactly.
We don't become somebody new until we actually just address that root, and then we open up new possibilities. We think about who we could be. We start intentionally becoming people who can do the things that we want to do to get the results or have the things that we want to have. Instead of, like that water example, just kind of like skating through life, not understanding that we didn't make anything go away. We just transferred it from one place to the next.
Yeah, I would see it the same way, that there's always, and you see, I think there's also sometimes a misconception that you achieve a certain level of a dream or a happiness, and then the struggle, so to speak, because we are talking about in those terms now, ends. It will never end, because there's just, until we die, there's no end to our development. There's no end to us being able to grasp new things and wanting to maybe experience something new. And that's sometimes, I think, a bit unnerving, but at the same time, it's the beauty, because there's always that growth, that movement, that other thing that you can do if you want, and that can add a lot of energy and also excitement.
Yeah.
But they're always, even just like day and night, or this moment I'm happy, the next one I'm sad. It's just a natural state of being.
Well, in coaching, you talk about comfort zones, right? And one of the notes that we talked about, and partially why we named this chat, is stepping out of your comfort zone with comfort. Now, and here's how it was outlined to me at one point in time, and you can tell me if you agree with this. If we have these concentric circles of, let's say, comfort zone, which is that inner circle where we like to stay, like, let's keep everything easy, and no growth happens there. It becomes habitual day after day. We do the same thing. We wonder why last year, this year's kind of the same as last year. Well, because you didn't do anything new. You're living a life of comfort, internally, externally. Outside of that is your growth zone, where now it's stressful, but it's a good stress. It's like, okay, things are changing. I have to think about stuff. I have to realign my priorities. I have to come up with new solutions. I'm learning new things. I'm breaking barriers. And then outside of that concentric circle, so we got comfort zone, growth zone, and then we have I've had listed a couple different ways, but like this idea of terror or fear, right? Like, now you might be doing yourself some harm because you have been thrust into a traumatic scenario where now you've got some deep, processing to do. You might step back from, the world or something like that for a period of time while you hunker down and go to safety again. But it seems to me, kind of what we're touching on here is that this idea of living outside that comfort zone into that growth zone, get comfortable with the process of growth, because it's not necessarily super easy. It's not a life without stress. or reframing it, I guess, into I'm okay with the growth. I'm okay with the stress that comes with that because that's my growth. Instead of backing away from it and saying how easy can I make
Mm.
my life and how comfortable can I make a life? Well, you're not going to grow if you do that.
Well, yes. You see, the whole idea is growth is a natural part of our lives. So even if we were to try to just stay in our comfort zone and never step out of that even a single bit, something will happen in our lives that will pull us, that we still have to grow in some way. You know, it's that rock bottom moment or that dramatic event. We might not be aware of it, but there is just, I don't know whether it's energy, you know, there are so many concepts about what it really is, but there's just something that growth is always to happen. So once we get comfortable with that reality in our lives, that it changes the only thing that's constant. That's something we read a lot about, right? And there's so much that's real in that statement because we are born, we grow up, and we die. That sounds like pretty boring. But when we start considering it as a whole journey where growth happens and where around every corner we can choose to be energized and to be excited about some new development, something we can do, some dream we have, and taking baby steps towards them, then life starts to sound like pretty fun and we can, you know, make something out of it and make this experience a nice experience, really.
It's,
So,
I think,
yeah.
the difference between choosing your growth and forcing growth upon you.
Mhm.
And there's a saying I heard at one point in time. I think it might be another John Maxwell quote. This idea that what's he say? Oh shoot! Now it just flipped out of my mind.
Mhm.
What is the quote? It's
No.
something so
Well,
frustrating.
it might come back to you.
Yeah. Oh, experience is the best teacher.
Mm.
So he says experience is the best teacher. He says, well, that's not exactly true. Evaluated experience is the best teacher because there's all sorts of people with a lot of experience who get to a ripe old age and have not changed at all. They are worse for the journey. However, when we have these experiences, whether we choose these experiences and push ourselves into our growth zone, or whether, like we talk about, these these circumstances are thrust upon us, and we must choose whether we will grow through this or not. Um, if we take the time to evaluate it, set ourselves up for, like what you talk about, who do I want to be, what do I want to do, and to get the results I want to have, that then the journey becomes exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I get to have this new experience. What growth could possibly come from this? How could I
Mhm.
choose to use this? Because I am in charge of using it. I am in charge of setting who I want to be, what I want to do, and the things that I could have because of that.
Yeah. And you know, that's why the combination of like accepting, choosing growth and moving, but at the same time learning to be present in the moment is so powerful. Like once you master those two, like combining those two in your life, that's when you start having that lightness or excitement, however you imagine your happiness, you know, your happy place in life. Because you move, you have experience, you do things you like, you are in alignment with, you get results. But then if you learn to be present and see that process and also see the result and not just move on to the next, what many of us tend to do when we are stuck in a certain system, that's when it's really enjoyable. Because we are like, oh, wow, wait, a month ago I was there. Now I'm here. I did ABC. That's really cool. Or now I've achieved this one thing that actually, come to think of it, I've dreamt about it since childhood. Wow. No, that's when it really becomes meaningful.
What do you think about in this process of evaluation and searching for meaning and planning and all, what do you think about this idea of taking a step outside of oneself? Not seeing things so personally sometimes, almost looking at yourself as a third party.
Mm-hmm.
If I was talking to my best friend, let's say, right? So I do these TikToks, and I started ending them with "Be your best friend today,"
Mm-hmm.
because it just slipped out of my mouth at one point in time. Hey, be your best friend today. And I thought, wait a second, that's actually kind of true. How would I treat myself? What would I say to myself in this circumstance, as challenging as it may be, if I was my best friend
Mm.
and I had to talk to myself, right, as a third party? What would I say about this to myself? And I find that the dialogue changes quite a bit. Things
Yeah.
aren't quite so bleak. No one's quite as stuck. Everything's going to be fine. I'm here with you, right? And it opens up a world of new possibilities, and encouragement, support.
Mm-hmm.
That if I don't look at myself, or if we don't look at ourselves as from the outside, sometimes things tend to get a little bit lost, little dark. And I think that's the idea of a coach,
Yeah,
right? That third
absolutely.
party who can talk to us from the outside, see things perhaps a little bit more clearly,
Mm.
without all the feelings, the pent up emotions, the emotional and mental closet doors we want to stay closed. We're like, that coach doesn't feel those, and
Yeah.
so the coach has no problem asking a question to shine the light on those things, or seeing things perhaps from a different perspective that opens up new opportunities, new growth that an individual just is apprehensive to see themselves.
Absolutely. And the additional thing of a really professional coach is absolutely in that person's corner, but also is neutral,
Mm.
right? So sometimes when we talk to a friend or a family member or whoever, there might be an emotional attachment there and some history, but a coach doesn't have that with you. So that's why I usually look at myself as a coach as a space holder, a space where someone can just be free to express anything and everything, and there will be no judgment. And then
That
from
goes
there, you can go.
that goes back to unshackling oneself. So
Yeah.
the things, there's a saying in shadow work. Now, maybe you're familiar with this or not, but in shadow
Yes,
work,
I
the
do.
things we hide, repress, or deny control us.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things we are shackled by. But when we just acknowledge their existence, we find they have no power. The power
That's so
is the
true.
fact that we don't the power is in the fact that we don't want to look at that. That's where all the power comes from, because it's taking all of our power to push it away, to keep it down, to not acknowledge it. When in fact, if we just stepped forward into, some people talk about step forward into your courageous truth or whatever,
Mm.
however you want to say it.
Yeah.
If you just step forward and said, hey, in this moment, I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling angry. Whatever those feelings are, allow them to come forward. And why are we feeling scared? Well, I'm scared that I'm going to show up to this thing and I'm going to be made a fool of, or whatever. Even as something as simple as this conversation, there are many people who are like, I could never get online and talk to somebody. How do you do that?
Just like
I'm
that.
just like, I don't know. I click some buttons. Like, I've got all the technical knowledge. I could just talk to a perfect stranger on the other side of the planet. It's not
Mm.
rocket science. When did you get the idea that you couldn't talk to somebody?
Yeah, but it's so true what you say. And I think it's a combination of two things you just said. So we talk about the things we suppress, our stuff that we take all the energy to suppress. So we give all the power to that stuff and are not empowered ourselves anymore. And once we do that, there's a lot of shame, judgment, and guilt attached to those events that we try to hide. So we tend to then take things much more personally, or have all these fears of being attacked or being questioned, because we know, oops, we might be found out, or someone is going to spot this shameful thing. Well, if we remove ourselves a little from ourselves, as you rightly said, and don't take everything as seriously anymore, then that's when we can sort of cut all those threads that are attached to our self-worth, and say like, hey, no matter how I screwed up, no matter what happened in my past, no matter what someone said about me, I'm just me, and that's all there is. And every human being has those stories. It's nothing special, really. Sometimes we get so caught up in our story that we think like, oh my God, it's the biggest thing. Actually, every human being has them. So there shouldn't be any shame or guilt or judgment attached to it. Once we pull that out, yeah, well, there's nothing to hide. You can just have a conversation with a stranger.
And it seems not only that does everybody have these things, but we seem to universally be hoping that someone will step forward and tell us it's okay by leading courageously into that space and saying, yep, here I am, all my successes and failures.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. We want somebody to lead us courageously into expressing our truths, expressing this idea that I came from struggle to success. We want that. We're desperately hoping that someone will show us the way, so that we know that we could do it ourselves.
That is true, but it's also true that many of us do not even realize we are in that kind of space, or we are holding something in, or attaching shame or guilt or judgment to certain events in our lives. It's only when we start sort of saying what we earlier said, like growth is interesting, it can be exciting, let me, go deeper into that we can actually create an awareness that these things are there, and these are the things that hold us back. So that awareness has to come. We have to start looking at those things that we are trying to push away. But yeah, humans can be very, very good at not even realizing certain things.
Yes, it's so fascinating to me that even the human mind, sometimes packs away things that we never, they're real. I've been in conversations with people, and this is why it's coming to my mind. We're like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought of that, in 20 years. It's like, where's that?
Yes.
And it's like this momentous, like this huge thing that happened with massive ramifications for how the person's been living for the past 20 years, but that it was gone. The human mind packed it away, but it didn't go it didn't leave. It just sat there dormant, felt like it was dormant, but it was actually secretly controlling the narrative. Right?
It's
And
almost
as soon as like the page was open and the story was read, it was like, oh, you can't control the narrative. Now you're just a part of the entire unfolding of the story. You are not the story.
That's why it's so powerful to create that self-awareness. Because when we choose to do that and then combine it with the sense like there doesn't have to be judgment. There's no good or bad, and these choices they don't need to be regretted. It's just the best we did at that moment. And maybe it wasn't the smartest move, but that's just how it went. From there we can learn so much, we can pull so much out of that, and that's very empowering.
Yeah.
But sweeping it under the carpet is just, as you also said, it takes so much energy to keep the carpet there, as all the stuff under the carpet grows more and more over the years.
Yes. Well, this is such a rich conversation. I wish we had more time. This is fascinating, and I love that you have a passion and energy for these things, and you've obviously done a lot of deep effort into learning skills to unpack these help people unpack their lives, because it is absolutely so necessary. And I love the idea of coaching. And so thanks so much. I'm glad you clicked the button to have coffee with me.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Well, this is Coffee with Humans. I'm going to leave you with the last word here in just a second, but I'm going to sign off for a second. Coffee with Humans are live, candid conversations with strangers who become friends. And today I'm here with my new friend, Sabrina, who's in Germany while I'm in the States. Just a fascinating conversation about unshackling oneself and what it takes to do that and why we'd want to anyhow. So Sabrina, if you could leave people with a tip, something to keep in mind, like if they could take something from today and just put it into practice to move them along the process of unshackling oneself, what would be one thing that you could leave us with?
Don't make it an overly complicated thing. If you feel that there's something that's nagging, however small, just start looking that way slowly. Start thinking for yourself, maybe have a conversation with someone you trust, and you can start that process of unshackling step by step. It doesn't have to be a big boom thing where you disrupt your entire life and, it sounds pretty scary. No, just make it like a fun part to start exploring, okay, what's really going on? And then I'm sure you can really unshackle certain parts of yourself that make your life even richer, nicer, and you get a few things that you have been dreaming of secretly, probably.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much again for being here on Coffee with Humans.
Thank you so much.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls. This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.